here for a
Okay. All right. Morning, folks. We're in session. Defendant and counsel are present. The jurors are in the jury room. Got them all? Okay. We have them all. Everybody ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for being here timely. Bring the jury in, please. Morning, folks. We're now back in session. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate your service, and we are ready to proceed in this matter. And I believe we had completed the last witness, and the state may proceed by calling your next witness.
The state calls Susan Dufour.
Okay. Ma'am, come around. There's a Bible up here. If you put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand and remain standing and take your oath, please. Thank you.
I do.
You may proceed.
Ma'am, could you state your name for the court?
My name is Susan Dufour.
And how, back in 2011, did you have occasion to come into contact with Grant Hayes?
Yes, I did.
And where were you working at that time?
I was working at Walmart on Glenwood Avenue.
And how long did you work at that Walmart on Glenwood Avenue?
That particular one, I had worked there for, since it opened, so 8 years, I think.
And how long total in your career did you work?
I had been with Walmart for 22 years.
That Walmart on Glenwood Avenue, do you know the address?
10,000 Glenwood Avenue.
Where is it in relation
Or-
to Crabtree Valley Mall, for instance?
It's about 6 miles
Okay. Is it
out.
out in Briar Creek?
Yes, it's in Briar Creek.
Okay. And what were your responsibilities at that Walmart back around July 13th and 14th of 2011?
I was a third shift assistant manager.
And what is the third shift?
Third shift runs from 8 p.m. till 8 a.m. for management.
And what were your responsibilities as an assistant manager?
My responsibilities were to get the associates together, to bring the store back together for the next day, to restock the shelves, and take care of any overnight business to have it ready for the next morning.
Okay. And back then, on July 14th of 2011, in the early morning hours, were you working around 2 a.m.?
Yes, I was.
And is that when you came into contact with Mr. Hayes?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, can I approach the witness?
You may.
Ma'am, this is a CD that's been marked as State's Exhibit A547. At some point, have you been able to review that video?
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, at this time I move to enter State's Exhibit A547.
Let A547 be received.
And I'd ask to publish this at this time.
You may.
is this the Walmart parking lot there at Briar Creek?
Yes, it's the parking lot out in front of the building.
And what, these buildings out here, what direction are we looking at, or what are we looking at?
That's looking out towards the road. 70 runs along this way, and this is ACC Boulevard, I believe.
Now, as I play this video, and the timestamp appears to be July 14th at 2:06:53 a.m. Do you see a gray, what appears to be a Durango pull up?
Yes, I do.
And here at 2:07 a.m. in 20 seconds, you see an individual walking from that Durango towards the building.
Yes, I do.
I'm going to switch to another camera angle. And where are we looking in this image?
We're looking at the front vestibule entrance on the grocery side of the store.
Okay, so this is the entrance from the parking lot into the store.
Yes.
Okay. And that individual that's at the top of the screen at 2:07:51. Is that the person that you interacted with that night?
Yes, it is.
And can you tell the jury, when you first saw Mr. Hayes, where did you first see him?
He was over in the hardware department. I was in the aisle, working across the aisle in the housewares department.
And what happened when you first saw him?
He came to me and asked me where some items were.
Do you recall what those items were?
He was asking me about saw blades for a jigsaw.
When he first approached you and asked you about saw blades for a jigsaw, do you remember what his demeanor was like?
Nothing out of the ordinary. He was just asking me about a product, so nothing that stood out.
Madam Clerk, could you? Thank you. Actually, a different angle from State Student 547. Where are we looking in this camera angle?
We're looking into the hardware department. This would be the paint counter right here. And I'm working right in this area.
Okay, and what are you doing in that area? Is this a box?
I'm stocking some of the freight. I had sent all of my associates to lunch, and so I was the only one out there, and I was just trying to keep up.
And when you say lunch, this is, I guess, halfway through the...
Yeah, our lunch break was from 2 a.m. till 3 a.m.
Okay. Is that the person you interacted with?
Yes, it is.
Does he go around the corner and appear back over in this area?
Yes, he does.
And what is that area of the Walmart?
There's a whole wall of different saw blades and then some other equipment is also along that wall, actual saws, electric saws and things like that.
In this angle, at 2:11 a.m. and 44 seconds, is there at the top of the screen that same individual?
Yes, it is.
Here at 2:12 a.m., is he walking down that aisle with the saw blades on it?
Yes, the saw blades are all right in here.
And here at 2:12 and 30 seconds a.m. on July 14th, does he appear to be shopping for saw blades?
Yeah, the saw blades are here, and then the reciprocal saws are here, and other power equipment.
And here at 2:13 and 40 seconds, is this when you first made contact with Mr. Hayes?
Yes, it is.
Do you recall what, at that point, it appears he had an item in his hand and he's approached you. Do you remember what specifically he asked you?
I think he was asking me about the reciprocal saw, you know, and the blades that went with it.
At this point, you walk back to where all the saws are with him.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you remember him saying anything else to you about the saws or this conversation?
He was asking me about the blades for a jigsaw, and he had brought me a blade, but it wasn't for a jigsaw. It was much larger. And he asked me if, when I showed him where the jigsaw blades were, he asked me if they were any larger than that. And I told him that no, that was as large as they could get. And then at that point, he had pointed another blade on there, and I had told him that that wasn't for the jigsaw, it was for a reciprocal saw.
Okay.
So,
As best you can, could you
Yeah.
explain to the jury the difference between a jigsaw and a reciprocating saw?
a jigsaw is small, you know, and it sits on top of a board and cuts out. A reciprocal saw is large and has a blade sticking out, and you can basically go through walls or whatever. It's just
Okay. So you
bigger and badder.
you know folks use a reciprocating saw to cut holes.
Holes in walls and things like that, yeah.
So you had a conversation with him about, he brings you a bigger blade that is not for a jigsaw. You say the jigsaw blades are over here, and then what happens at this point?
I think at this point, he's asking me about, still asking me about the blades, but I think then I go and show him what the the big blades went to. I think I showed him where the reciprocal saw was. But at this point, we're still talking about the blades, you know. I think he didn't want to have to buy, you know, another saw.
Okay.
So, yeah, and this is where I go and I show him the reciprocal saw that particular blade went to.
Did he lead you to believe that he had a jigsaw?
Yes, that was what I was assuming. He had a jigsaw and he was just looking for a larger blade to go on it.
And he asked you about larger blades?
Yes.
These minutes that you're interacting with him, does his demeanor ever change?
No, not really.
The whole time he was calm?
Yes, he was.
And here we are at 2:17 a.m. and 20 seconds. And at this point, did you go back to what you were doing before, Mr. Hayes?
Yes, I left him to ponder over the wall and I went back to work.
And just to be clear, I think we've referred to him as Mr. Hayes, but when he came up to you at 2 a.m. that early Thursday morning, you didn't know who he was?
I had no idea who he was. I mean, I just thought he was a late night shopper.
Here we are at 2:18 a.m. and 20 seconds, and is he still standing there calmly shopping?
Yes.
And at this point, does it appear that at 2:18 a.m. and 40 seconds, does it appear he picked up a reciprocating saw?
Yes.
After he gets that saw, does he come back and talk to you again?
Yeah, at that point he comes and he is asking me about where some other items are.
And is that you leading him down this aisle?
Yes.
And what items does he ask about?
He was asking for heavy-duty trash bags, and then he was also asking for like where the plastic, heavy-duty plastic was.
Heavy-duty plastic and trash bags?
Yes.
And here we are at 2:19 and 50 seconds. I can switch the camera angle real quick. Here we are looking at that. Is this the other camera angle that we looked at earlier?
Yeah, that's looking from the aisle into the department.
And here at 2:19 and 10 seconds a.m. and July 14th, is that when you led him down this aisle?
Yes, I did.
And what's located on that?
I think in that area we were looking for the trash bags, which are down at the end. They were down like in this area.
And again, did you leave him to?
I did. Yeah, I did.
Do you remember what specifically he asked you about trash bags?
He just was looking for the heavy duty industrial strength.
And then does he reapproach you again?
Yes, it does.
And this is at 2:20 and 16 seconds in the morning.
Yeah.
What does he ask you about?
This time he's asking me about the plastic.
What kind of plastic was he looking for?
Just the heavy duty plastic that you use to throw down on the floor to protect your carpet when you're painting, which comes in rolls.
Is that located somewhere down this aisle that's behind these balloons?
Yeah, it's down in here. This is where all the paint is, and then the painting supplies are down in there also.
And here at 2:21 and 25 seconds, do you see him going down that aisle?
Yes, I do.
Does he come approach you again, or just keep shopping? Do you remember?
He comes and gets me again. And this time he asked me about, I think he asked me about where some gloves were. Some, and I think he asked me about where some goggles were. And not knowing exactly where it is, I'm wandering around a little bit trying to find it.
Do you recall what kind of gloves he wanted?
He was just looking for some rubber gloves. So.
Did you leave him back in this aisle?
I did.
Okay. And after you pointed him to those gloves, was that the last time that you spoke with him?
I think it was, yeah.
At any point over, I guess at this point it's 2:23 in the morning, according to this video. At any point did he appear stressed or freaked
No,
out?
not at all.
The whole
Not at all.
time he was calm?
He was very calm.
I can skip this forward. Here at 2:26 and 25 seconds, it appears he's still shopping around for.
Yeah, still looking around for some of those items.
I'll show you one more camera angle. This camera angle, what are we looking at it?
We're at the front register.
previously seen this video, correct?
Yes, I have.
That's him up there?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And what is that object?
That's the reciprocating saw.
Yeah, you can almost read skill right there, can't you?
Yes.
And what is that object?
Those are the goggles.
Okay. And are these the trash bags?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. This is at 2:30 and 40 seconds in the morning? according to the
Yes.
timestamp. Is this him paying at the register?
Yes, it is.
Does he appear to take his wallet out at this point at 2:31 and 15 seconds?
Yes, it does.
And can you tell what that transaction was that just occurred? I'm sorry, is that the person?
No, that's the person before him.
Okay.
Yeah. So she was finishing up the transaction with the customer in front of him. Now that's him right there.
And that's the saw and
Yeah.
other objects?
And the plastic. That's the plastic roll.
And like goggles?
The goggles.
Those are some gloves that she was put to a bag?
Yes.
And did he also buy an additional set of blades for that reciprocating saw?
Yes, he did.
Now, is that him taking out some money?
Yes, that's him taking out the money.
Can you tell what's happening at this point?
I think he's I don't.
Do you recall from previously viewing this video that there's some mouthwash that was...
There was some mouthwash, and that I think she had taken it off the receipt, and then and put it back.
Okay, so that's been exchanged.
Yes.
Okay. And that, here looking at the bottom of the screen, that's him picking up the reciprocating saw at 2:33 and 40 seconds on July.
Yes.
2nd. Appears to be getting his bags at the bottom of the screen.
Yes.
Sorry, one last camera angle. And are we looking outside at that parking lot again?
Yes, that's the front parking lot.
And that Durango appears in that parking lot,
Yes.
and it appears to have its lights off at this point.
Yes, it is.
And here at 2:34 a.m. and 39 seconds, that appear to be Mr. Hayes with that shopping cart the reciprocating saw go into the car?
Yes, it does.
.235 and 15 seconds, it disappeared and lifted the back gate of that Durango and is putting stuff in his car.
Yes.
Appears he put something in the front passenger seat.
Yes, it does.
And then he drives away at 2:36 and 15 seconds,
Yes.
leaving the shopping cart right there.
Yes.
I believe he testified that the first time you saw Grant Hayes on this video was at 2:06 a.m. and we're at 2:36 a.m., so that's around half an hour.
Correct.
And he spent some 10 or 15 minutes with him inside the store.
Correct.
At any point did his demeanor change from being calm?
No, not at all.
And he asked you about a reciprocating saw, some gloves, some plastic sheeting. Do you see that often?
You know, we would get different kinds of shoppers coming in, so nothing really surprised me. You know, there's lots of third shift workers in this world, and, you know, it's when they shop.
Sure.
So,
Thank you, Nick.
thank you.
All right, questions, Mr. Gaskins?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
All right. Sure.
Ms. Buford?
Yes.
Let me ask you, if you will, to examine what I have marked as Defendant's Exhibit number 37D and ask you if you can identify that.
Yeah, that's the receipt.
And before I take it away from
Uh-huh.
you, I believe that we saw that while Grant was at the cash register, that he paid for this purchase with cash.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that also reflected on this receipt?
Yes, it says right on the receipt, cash tendered. Uh-huh.
One of the last things that we saw when he went on the video, when he went to the Dodge Durango, was that he opened the right front passenger door of the vehicle and put something inside it. There was no one else in that vehicle, was there?
Not that I could see.
Now, he came into the store at approximately 2 a.m.,
Thereabout.
and I take it that you didn't immediately confront him until...
No, not till he came back to where I was.
And you spent about 15 minutes with him while he went to various different locations, and I think, let me just go down the list of the things on the receipt and be sure that I understand what it was that he bought while he was in the store.
Okay.
He bought a pair of 3M goggles.
Yes.
He bought a reciprocating skill saw,
Yes.
and that's that big
That's
saw
the big
with
box,
saw with
yeah,
a
that you
long
saw.
blade on it.
Yeah.
He bought some heavy-duty trash bags.
Yes.
He bought some sheeting, something that's listed in this sheeting. What would that be?
That would be the plastic sheeting, the rolls of plastic sheeting.
He bought a 4, I guess, millimeter tarp.
Yes.
What is that?
That was, I think that he got a tarp over in another part of the store, just a regular tarp. He didn't ask me about that. He picked that up on his own. So.
And that was you also in the video.
That was me, yes.
Walking around with him.
Yes.
Trying to locate the different items.
Correct.
That he wanted. And I believe he brought some gloves, and he bought some blades for the saw.
Mm-hmm.
I have something here, you'll have to tell me what the initials stand for. It's 6WD reciprocating blade, is that what I'm seeing? Do you need to look at it?
Let me see the receipt.
Yeah, Photoshop.
All right.
This item right here.
Yes, that's the extra blade.
Now, and I think the last item on the list was the mouthwash.
Yes, it was.
Now, during the time that you were in the store, I believe Mr. Zellinger touched on this, Grant's demeanor was extremely calm, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary.
Just like he's in there buying milk and juice.
Yes, it was.
Now, you testified at his trial, did you not?
Yes, I did.
You're aware that he has been convicted of killing Laura Ackerson on July 13th,
Yes, I did.
2011.
Yes.
So he was in your store not long after he had killed her, correct?
That's correct.
Well, sustained. Sustained. You have no personal knowledge of that, do you?
I mean, he was in there. I
know,
had no.
but you don't know when.
I have no idea what he had done before or
Okay.
after. Or
All right.
all I'm aware of is,
Sustained.
yeah.
Sustained.
What you know is that this man is in your store buying these objects, and his demeanor is extremely calm, isn't it?
His demeanor was just ordinary.
Just like any other shopper.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah.
There was nothing about anything that he did to indicate to you that he might have just done something else.
No.
Thank you. That's all.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Can I cover it with?
You may.
And I'll show you what's, you previously been shown the Defendant's Exhibit 37D. I marked it as State's Exhibit 551. Is this the receipt from that Walmart that you were just speaking about?
Yes, it is.
Okay. It does appear to be all the items that Mr. Hayes bought that evening.
Yes, it does.
And does it indicate that he paid cash tendered?
Yes, it does.
So what was the total of these?
The total was $98.93.
And since I'm having you read from this, Your Honor, I'd move to enter State's Exhibit 551 at this time.
Let it be received.
$98 was the total. He tendered $100.
$100, and then got $1.07 back for change.
Can you tell how much the mouthwash was that was added and then taken off?
The mouthwash was $2.77.
Okay, so had that mouthwash been included, it would have been more than
It would have been over 100, yes.
Okay, and so that was taken off that receipt.
Yes, it was.
And so he paid $100 and got some $1.07 back.
Correct.
And that was on July 14th at 2:32
32.
in the morning.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Anything else? Mr. Gaskins? Mr. Gaskins, anything?
I'm sorry, I don't have any.
Okay, thank you.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. You may stand down. This witness is excused. Call your next witness.
This time the state would call Dexter Gill.
All right. Go, come around, be sworn.
He's not the testimony in this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you.
I do.
Would you
William Dexter Gill,
And how are you employed?
employed by the city of Raleigh.
Manny, hold up.
Pull the mic up and speak up loud, please.
You're Dexter Gill, employed by the city of Raleigh?
Correct.
And are you employed with the Raleigh Police Department?
Yes, ma'am.
And how long have you been employed with the Raleigh Police Department?
27.5 years.
And are you currently an investigator or detective with the Raleigh Police Department?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
And how long have you served as an investigator or detective with the Raleigh?
Since 1997.
Did you, in July of 2011, were you working as a homicide detective with the Raleigh Police Department?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And how long had you been in the homicide unit?
I moved to the homicide unit in January of 2008.
And so prior to that, from 1997 to 2008, you were involved as a detective, but in other areas?
Yes, ma'am, correct.
And what other areas were you involved in?
Drugs and vice for a period of time. I worked drug interdiction for a period of time. Moved to the Drug Enforcement Administration resident office here in Raleigh as a task force officer for about 5 years. And then special victims and then the homicide.
So when you began in the homicide unit of 2008, were you assigned to a particular team with the homicide unit?
Yes, ma'am.
And in July of 2011, did you serve as a member of two basic homicide teams?
Yes, ma'am.
And in terms of your duties and responsibilities as a homicide detective, can you explain that to the jury?
Both homicide units, we have 2 homicide units that alternate shifts. We have a day shift unit and an evening shift unit, and we switch every other week. Every which unit is on the evening shift covers the midnight time as far as callback for any incidents that occur during that time frame. We investigate all cases involving the death of a human being with the exception of motor vehicle accidents.
Do you also become involved on occasion with regard to missing persons investigations?
Yes, ma'am, if they are suspicious in nature.
Do you recall when and how you became involved in the investigation into Laura Jean Ackerson's person and the fact that she was a missing person?
Yes, ma'am, I do. When I arrived at work on July 19th, 2011, I had a voicemail message on my desk phone from Detective Tommy Lewis from the Kinston Police Department. Detective Lewis had left a message that he was investigating a case out in Kinston that had some Raleigh ties and had requested that I give him a call back.
And were you able to talk with him on the 19th?
I did call him back, but I had to leave a message. He did not answer his phone.
And shortly after that, did you receive some more information about the Kinston missing persons case?
Yes, ma'am, I did. I was contacted by Raleigh Police Department Sergeant Jackie Taylor, who is a sergeant of the other homicide unit, and advised that she had received information from Detective Gortney out of Kinston about Miss Ackerson being missing.
And so Sergeant Taylor's squad had been on the night before, and then your squad was coming on that next morning?
If I remember correctly, they were on day shift and we were coming on 3 to 11, the evening shift.
And through Detective Courtney, had certain information been provided to the Raleigh Police Department?
Yes, ma'am.
And did Detective Courtney actually come up and sit down with you?
Yes, ma'am. Later, I believe later that same day, Detective Gortney traveled to Raleigh and met with our unit in our office.
And at that stage, what information did you have to go on?
Pretty much relayed from Detective Gortney that Ms. Ackerson had been reported as missing, that she was currently living at 619 North Heritage Street, apartment 202 in Kinston, reportedly last seen on July 13th, 2011. Detective Gortney advised that she was last known to travel to Raleigh on that date to visit her children at the home of the children's father, Grant Hayes. He advised that they were both involved in an ongoing child custody dispute with the courts, and that Mr. Hayes was reported to reside at 4021 apartment 322 Bella Park Trail in Raleigh. Detective Gortney stated that he had spoke with Mr. Hayes on July the 17th, 2011 by telephone, and during that brief conversation, Mr. Hayes advised that Ms. Ackerson arrived at his apartment on the 13th to pick up the children. He said that she left the apartment with the children and returned between 9 and 9:30 p.m. that evening to drop the children off. Mr. Hayes told Detective Gortney that Ms. Ackerson left the residence at approximately 10 o'clock p.m.
And having that information from Detective Courtney, did you and the other detectives begin to take steps to try to investigate this case further?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And what was the first thing that you did?
The first thing that I did is I prepared a bolo containing a picture of Ms. Ackerson's vehicle and a picture of her, and disseminated it to all Raleigh police units.
And as you were beginning this investigation, did you and other officers receive information that the victim had previously resided in the Raleigh area?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
And what did you find out about that?
The Detective Gortney, when we started looking at the information that he provided, we were able to determine that Mr. Hayes and Ms. Ackerson resided together in Raleigh in 2009 and lived in an apartment located at 5400 Summit Manor Lane, apartment 106.
And so that was information that was kind of coming in as you all began the
Yes, ma'am.
investigation. As part of your responsibilities in the investigation, did you begin to examine phone records for Laura Ackerson's phone?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And do you recall when you got those phone records?
Approximately 6:42 p.m. on that date, the 19th.
And at this point, you've indicated that you've created the bolo with Ms. Ackerson's photo and a photo of her vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
So it still hadn't been found at this point.
That's correct.
When you received phone records for Laura Ackerson's phone, what analysis or what examinations did you begin at that point?
I just began analyzing the telephone records to include the location of the cellular towers that the handset itself was communicating with during the phone calls that she had made and received, and an attempt to identify each and every individual that she had spoken with during that time frame.
And were you able to determine the last phone call that had been placed from that phone?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And when was that?
The last telephone call was an outbound call to 917-744-7651 that occurred on the 13th of July 2011 at 4:59 p.m. and it lasted for 118 seconds.
And were you able to determine subscriber information with regard to the phone number that Laura Ackerson's phone called?
The information that I was provided was that it belonged to Grant or Amanda Hayes.
And were you able, through the phone records and working with other detectives with the Raleigh Police Department, able to determine the cell tower location at the time that phone call was made at 4:59 on July the 13th?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And where was that phone?
That cell tower is located at 3908 Arrow Drive in Raleigh, which is just a short distance from the intersection of Interstate 440 and Glenwood Avenue.
Were you indicated you had information that Laura Ackerson was coming to Raleigh to Grant Hayes' apartment.
Correct.
And so were you able to investigate in terms of looking at the phone records and seeing her location or the phone's location at 4:59 on July the 13th, and able to determine kind of what made sense in terms of where she would have when she would have arrived at the apartment on Bella Park Trail?
Objection.
You asking me if her destination was the Bella Park Trail address? when she would have arrived there
Yes, sir.
from where the cell tower indicated her phone was?
Yes, sir.
Objection's overruled. Do you have an opinion about that?
In my opinion, based upon the time that her phone is communicating with that cell tower, she would have arrived, if she continued on that path without diverting to any other location, she would have arrived at the apartment prior to the time that Mr. Hayes said that she arrived.
How far a drive is it from the Glenwood Avenue there at Crabtree or there at the Beltline to the Bella Park Trail?
I'm going to say at the most 20 to 30 minutes depending on traffic, if the traffic's heavy.
And so 4:59, 20 to 30 minutes, it would have 5:30.
Correct.
And you were aware that, or what information did you have with regard to when Grant Hayes actually indicated to Detective Gordon that he had arrived?
No,
or that she had arrived?
Detective Gorton advised me that Mr. Hayes stated that she arrived at 6:40 p.m.
With regard to the phone call that had been placed from Laura Ackerson's phone at 4:59 to the phone number ending in 7651, did you examine the phone records with regard to 7651 related to cell phone towers?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
So you also had phone records for that particular number?
That is correct.
And were you able to draw any conclusions with regard to July the 13th of 2011 based on examining those records and the cell towers?
I examined the phone call that Ms. Ackerson made at 4:59 p.m. on the phone records for the 7651 phone that belonged to Grant or Amanda, and looked at the tower location for that phone at the time the phone call was placed, and it stayed in the tower locations for the residents at 4021 apartment 322 Bella Park Trail, and didn't leave that tower location for the remainder of the night.
And so the tower that a phone would have hit off from the residence if a phone call was made or received from the residence, it hit off that tower and didn't hit off any other towers for the remainder of the night?
Correct.
You indicated that the last phone call either received or made outgoing or incoming for Laura Ackerson's phone was at 4:59. Were there other phone calls made from the 7651 number the rest of that night?
I do not recall that. I'm going to say they will if there were, just based on the fact that based on my notes I put that it did not leave that location for the remainder of the night, and there would have had to have been an incoming and outgoing phone call from that phone to dictate which tower location it was at.
During the time that you were going through those phone records, did you receive notification that Laura's vehicle had been located?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And when did you receive that notification?
At 22:54 hours at 10:54 p.m. that night, that same night.
And this would have been July the 19th, that Tuesday evening?
Correct.
Did you respond to the location where Laura's vehicle had been found?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay, and where was that?
It was parked in a parking space at 5431 Summit Manor Lane in Raleigh.
And you had earlier indicated that the investigation had revealed that Laura and Grant Hayes had lived at Summit Manor Lane previously.
That's correct.
And so was this car located in the same apartment complex parking lot as Laura and Grant had lived?
Yes, ma'am.
When you went to 5431 Summit Manor Lane, did you observe Laura's car parked there?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And did you yourself become involved in any investigation with regard to that car?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you describe that for the jury?
I went and spoke with the management at the apartment complex, just to see if they had any cameras or any information at all about the car itself.
And were you able to, or were they able to provide any camera or video of anything that was relevant or helpful with regard to that car's location
No,
in the
ma'am.
parking lot?
No, ma'am.
While you were there, did CCBI Agent Trimlett, did she come and actually process the car, photograph it, and process it for fingerprints and DNA and that type of thing?
Yes, ma'am, she did.
And what else did you do while you were out there?
Myself and at the time Detective Latour, who's now been promoted, walked the area between, the wooded area between the Summit Manor apartment complex where the car was located and the Bella Park Trail apartments, which are relatively close. Walked that area to try to locate any other evidence or anything that was of value.
And when you say you walked that area, how far was it from where Laura Ackerson's car was recovered at 5431 to Summit Park Lane, Summit Manor Lane to 4021 Bella Park Trail?
Approximately 400 yards.
And was that walking distance?
That was walking distance, yes, ma'am.
And you indicated that you walked between the two locations. Did you discover any evidence or recover anything that you collected that you thought might be relevant to the investigation?
No, ma'am, I did not.
With regard to the phone number that Laura Ackerson had last had contact with at 4:59 on the 13th, did you and other detectives work together to determine its location, that being the number ended in 7651?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
And did you receive information from Detective Heckman about the location of that phone on July the 20th of 2011?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And what information did you receive?
It was approximately the 03:48 a.m. The email indicated that the GPS coordinates for the phone showed that it was located at a residence off of Skinner Lane in Richmond, Texas.
And did you receive information that in the days just prior to that the phone had been turned off and on intermittently?
Prior to the recovery of Ms. Ackerson's vehicle, when I was going through the phone records for the 7651 phone, I realized that on the 17th, the early morning hours of the 17th, that phone had begun to travel south through the Georgia-Alabama area and stopped in the Richmond, Texas area on the 18th. I did not have a exact pinpoint GPS location until Detective Heckman was able to provide that.
As part of your investigation, did you shortly thereafter travel to Kinston?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And what was the purpose in going to Kinston?
Myself and Detective Latour traveled to Kinston and met with Detective Gortney and Agent Chapman, and had them turn over all information and evidence that they had acquired up to that point. Detective Gortney also applied for another search warrant for Ms. Ackerson's apartment, and we went to that apartment and executed that warrant.
And so you were aware prior to you getting to Kinston that Agent Chapman with the SBI and Detective Gortney had already been in the victim's apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
And that they had seized certain items?
Yes, ma'am.
And those items were turned over to you at this point?
Correct.
And why was that?
Raleigh Police at that point in time was taking over the investigation since it was last known that Ms. Ackerson was in Raleigh.
And you indicated that there was a search warrant applied for by Detective Gortney and executed at Ms. Ackerson's apartment. What was the purpose of you going back into the apartment?
There were some other items that we wanted to look for in the apartment such as any item that might contain DNA samples that we would be able to compare at a later time if needed.
And so when you went into the apartment, did you seize additional items?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
And what types of items did you seize when you went back there?
We seized an invoice from her attorney, a photograph from the kid's bedroom, a pink toothbrush from the bathroom, blue and white toothbrush from the bathroom, some financial documents, her hairbrush, a spiral notebook, a handwritten note, and some hair from the bathroom.
And with regard to the hair and the toothbrush, the hairbrush, what was the reason that you were seizing those types of items?
To obtain a DNA profile if needed.
And at this point, Laura Ackerson her car's been discovered, but she's not been found.
Correct.
While you were in Kinston, did you conduct any interviews?
Yes, ma'am.
And who did you interview while you were in Kinston?
After I completed the search, I responded to the Star Daycare and interviewed Miss Patsy Hayes, Grant Hayes' mom.
And what was the reason for speaking with Miss Patsy Hayes?
Just to see if she had any idea where Miss Ackerson might be.
And as a result of speaking with her, did you discover that Laura Ackerson had not shown up for the custody exchange?
That's what she advised.
And did you ask her or indicate to her desire to speak with Grant Hayes?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And was she able to provide information to you as to how to get in touch with Mr. Hayes?
She advised that he had traveled to Texas and was currently on his way back, and I provided her with a business card with my contact information and asked her to have him give me a call when he returned.
And in terms of any information that Ms. Hayes provided, was she able to, Patsy Hayes, provide any information with regard to Laura Ackerson's whereabouts?
No, ma'am, she could not.
Detective Gill, you had indicated that as part of your investigation that you were looking at the Hayes' cell phone, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you, during the course of examining those records, find any attempts to locate any U-Haul rental companies?
There were rental companies. There were several calls where attempts were made to contact rental companies. I do not recall exactly which companies they were. That information was passed to Detective Latour at the time for him to follow up on the rental companies.
And during that time, were you also trying to put together a timeline, basically, with regard to Laura's activities when she had last been seen?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that something you typically would do in this type of situation?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And why is that important?
Just to be able to track her movement, who she was talking to. I went based upon the phone records that we had, and on that timeline it indicates the phone number that she either spoke to, outgoing call or incoming call, the person that subscribed to that number as far as who owned it, the location of the tower, when that phone call was made or received, up until the last phone call, just to be able to track her movement.
And with regard to Laura's phone, we've talked about the 459 being the last outgoing or incoming call that was received, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And were there other, appears to be phone calls made that were sent to voicemail after that time?
Yes, ma'am. There were other inbound calls.
But nothing outbound?
No, ma'am.
And anything to indicate that she answered the phone after?
No, ma'am.
As part of your investigation at this point, did you speak with, at that time, Shay Elmer?
I did not. No, ma'am.
Was that something that was done by other investigators?
Yes, ma'am.
And just in terms of how this works, are there multiple detectives from the Raleigh Police Department that are involved in an investigation, pretty much everybody doing separate things?
Each homicide unit has 5 homicide detectives and a supervisor. when we are assigned a case, when we receive a case, all 5 of those detectives work on that investigation until it's solved. It's not just one person, it's a group of people, and we incorporate other teams like our telephone people, and if we need additional resources, the robbery detectives will come in and help. But we're working on it as a group.
And so you indicated that as part of this investigation, Shay Ulmer was interviewed by other detectives.
That's correct.
And as a result of that interview, did you begin to get more information about this trip to Texas?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you able to find out any information about this Skinner Lane, where the phone had been located?
Shay was able to provide Detective Latour the location of a relative identified as Karen Berry. That was Ms. Hayes' sister that lived at 4336 Skinner Lane. And when I pulled that address up on Google Earth, I realized it was the exact same location as the GPS pinpoint that was provided by Detective Heckman.
And so at this point, you had a name of somebody that lived at that address where that phone was determined to be at 348 on July the 20th?
Correct.
With regard to the U-Haul information, as you and other investigators work, were you able to determine that there had been a U-Haul rented here in Raleigh and returned in Texas?
Yes, ma'am.
And where in Texas was that U-Haul
The
rented or returned?
Detective Latour made contact with U-Haul and was able to determine that it was returned at the U-Haul dealership in Katy, Texas.
And in terms of the Skinner Lane address, that's been identified as being in Richmond, Texas.
Yes, ma'am.
Where is Katy, Texas in relation to Richmond, Texas?
It's approximately 30 miles away. I don't know, I'm not familiar enough with Texas to be able to tell you in what direction, but it's about a 30-minute drive between the two.
And as a result of all of this information that had been coming in through your efforts as well as other efforts of the Raleigh Police Department detectives looking into the missing person of Laura Ackerson, did you determine in consultation with your supervisor that you needed to go to Texas?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you go with another detective to Texas?
Yes, ma'am. Detective Latour.
And when did you leave for Texas?
On July 22nd, 2011 at 5 p.m.
And did you leave driving?
Driving, yes, ma'am.
And how long a trip was that?
We arrived in Texas on July 23rd at 4:45 p.m.
And once you got to Texas on July the 23rd, that afternoon and evening, had you decided that you were going to try to locate Karen Berry and speak with her?
Yes, ma'am. When we got there, our plan was to get some sleep, but we had planned on the following morning to go down and just meet with Miss Berry and just speak with her about the trip and try to gain any information that we could from her if she had any idea where Miss Ackerson might be. And then Detective Latour had also contacted U-Haul, and we had that trailer secured, and we were planning to go take a look at that trailer and bring it back to Raleigh.
And had you, prior to going out in Texas or on the way out there, or even once you got there, had you called ahead and let Miss Berry know that you were coming to see her?
No, ma'am.
Had you, at that point, before you got to Texas, had you spoken with any local law enforcement officers and let them know that you were in the area?
I did not. Detective Latour had.
And so on the morning of July the 24th of 2011, did you and Detective Latour go to the Skinner Lane address, the address of Karen Berry?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
And did you go with any other law enforcement officers to that address?
Yes, ma'am. When we went on the way, we actually stayed in Katy, Texas that night because that's where the U-Haul was located at. So the following morning we got up and during the drive to the Richmond area, Detective Latour contacted Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office, which is where Richmond's located, and requested for 2 uniformed deputies to meet us right off of Skinner Lane to accompany us to the house.
And why did you do that?
Well, I'm outside of my jurisdiction. I just wanted someone with jurisdiction that Miss Berry would recognize when we approached the house.
And so on the way from Katy, Texas to Richmond, Texas, that's when the first contact was made with law enforcement in the Fort Bend County area.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Did uniformed deputies in fact meet with you?
Yes, ma'am.
And did they accompany you to Miss Berry's house?
Yes, ma'am, they did.
And do you recall, I mean, was it still morning when you got to Miss Berry's house?
Yes, ma'am, it was still morning.
Can you describe the process you went through in terms of once you arrived at Miss Berry's house, what you did?
I had 2 deputies with me, Deputy Simpa, I believe, and Deputy Gwynn, and myself and Detective Latour. We all pulled in the driveway. There were vehicles in the driveway. I didn't see any activity outside. Myself and Deputy Simpa went up to the door and knocked on the door. Miss Berry came to the door, and I told her who I was, and then I just asked her, did she mind if I spoke with her? And she said no, she didn't, and she invited me inside.
And did you and Detective Latour then go inside the residence?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
And once you got inside, did you tell Miss Berry the reason that you wanted to talk with her?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And what specifically did you tell her?
I told her that I knew that Grant and Amanda had recently made a trip to her residence and had stayed for some time, and that they had brought a U-Haul trailer with them for some reason. Based upon the information that I had from Shay, it was an unplanned visit. It wasn't something that they had planned a long time ago. It just seemed a little unusual, and that Grant had children by another lady by the name of Laura Ackerson, who was currently missing in Raleigh, and I just wanted to speak with her about if she had any knowledge of that or how the trip went.
And when you were speaking with Miss Berry and explaining that information to her, can you describe her demeanor?
Very nervous, visibly upset, and at one point crying.
Did you ask her if she would answer your questions?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And what was her response?
She stated that she would and asked if she could pray first.
And in terms of the prayer, did she pray in the presence of you and Detective Latour?
Yes, ma'am, she did.
And after praying, was that a prayer she said out loud?
Yes, ma'am.
And after praying, what happened then?
She started giving me information about the visit.
Objection at this point, Your Honor.
I don't intend to go into the content of statements at this time.
Okay. Well, sustained as to I'm going to let you rephrase and be specific with your questions.
Did you, at that point, Detective Gill, begin asking Ms. Berry various questions about Grant and Amanda Hayes' trip to her house?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And did she respond to your questions?
Yes, ma'am, she did.
And as that interview went forward, did it come a time where you asked Ms. Berry if Laura Ackerson was here, being there?
Overall.
What did you ask her?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
What specifically did you ask her?
I asked, is Laura here somewhere?
And based on her response to that question, what did you do?
I asked Detective Latour to continue the interview with Ms. Berry, and I stepped outside and spoke with Deputy Simpa and requested that he contact one of their supervisors.
And did your request of Deputy Simpa be that a supervisor respond to your location?
I just requested to speak with one at that point.
And who did you end up speaking to?
Patrol Sergeant Reggie Powell called Deputy Simpa's phone, and I spoke with him on the phone. I explained to him the situation that I had. He contacted via phone their homicide unit, and the first interaction I had with them was when Detective Brad Richard with their homicide unit arrived at the house.
And once Detective Brad Richard with the homicide with the Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office arrived there, did you make any requests of him or provide any information to him?
I pretty much briefed him on what I knew at that point, and he requested for their processing unit to respond.
And what happened then? What was the next thing that you did?
I went back into the house and advised Detective Latour and Miss Berry that we would need to do a more thorough recorded interview with her. And there were some items that she had mentioned during our conversation that I asked her would she show me where they were at.
And did you at that point have an opportunity to walk through the area with Ms. Berry?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And in conjunction with Detective Richard and the processing unit from the Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office, were various items collected from that residence and from the surrounding area?
Yes, ma'am, there were.
At some point, did you go across the street and look at a creek area?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And was there searching that was done with regard to that creek area as well?
Yes, ma'am.
With regard to the various items that they were collected that day, various items were collected that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Ms. Berry actually, was she taken to a different location to do a recorded interview?
Yes, ma'am. She was transported back to the Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office for a recorded interview.
And after she had left, did you all continue with the search and the processing of that area?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
Now, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Hill, I'm handing you what has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A89 through A97. Would you take a moment and look at those? Your Honor, may I approach again?
All right.
I'm also handing you State's Exhibit A188 through A190. Detective Gill, do you recognize those items that I've handed you, which is 89 through 97 and 188 through 190?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And what are they?
Photographs of Miss Berry's residence at 4336 Skinner Lane.
And those photographs depict some of the interior of the residence, but primarily the exterior of the residence, and depict the location where various items of evidence were collected in this case.
Yes, ma'am, along with the landing across the street.
And would State's Exhibits 89 through 97 and 188 through 190 assist you in illustrating your testimony?
Yes, ma'am, it would.
At this time, the state will move to introduce into evidence State's Exhibit 89 through A89 through A97, A188 through A190.
Let me receive.
So at this time, may I have permission to publish these?
You may.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Detective Gill, what's being shown on the screen is State's Exhibit A89. Can you describe what's depicted in this photograph?
Is a portion of Skinner Lane. Miss Berry's residence would be off to your left if you're a photographer.
You have a pointer up there, laser pointer?
Miss Berry's residence would be over here, off to the left. Skinner Lane is a dead-end street. If you continue further down the roadway, it's a dead end. This, going back in this direction, is headed back to the park where we met the deputies at prior to going to her house.
So if you continue down Skinner Lane with Miss Berry's residence on your right there and kept going forward, that dead end?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
How far down?
I'm going to say approximately a mile.
What's on the, as we're facing it, there's two police cars. Are they pulled in the driveway area or near the driveway area?
There was a clearing a little further down here. Past her driveway is a clearing, and that's where most of the police cars pulled over at. The residence was kind of getting crowded with the number of vehicles that were arriving with the processing unit, and plus we had roped it off as a crime scene.
And you've indicated that Miss Berry's residence is on the left. What's located on the right?
On the right is where Oyster Creek runs parallel with the roadway right here.
Detective Gill, shown on the screen now is State's Exhibit A90. Do you recognize or can you explain what's depicted in this photograph?
That's Miss Berry's residence, looking at it from the roadway.
And so the driveway would be,
Would be over here to your right, past this fence.
and there appears to be a police car kind of in the far right, but there are also, two other trucks and another vehicle located in the
Yes,
driveway area?
yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Were they there when you arrived that morning?
If I recall correctly, this is Deputy Semple's vehicle that arrived with us.
State's Exhibit A91, what's shown in this photograph?
This is the other direction on Skinner Lane headed toward the dead end. Miss Berry's residence is right here to the right.
State's Exhibit A92, can you describe what's depicted in this photo?
Almost directly across the street from Ms. Berry's residence is a path, a clearing that leads down to Oyster Creek. This is looking down that clearing to a small little landing. There's a John boat off to the left, and you can see a portion of Oyster Creek.
State's Exhibit A93, what's shown in this photograph?
That's the front of Ms. Berry's residence.
And when you say the front of the residence, is there, the front door to that residence, is it visible in this photo?
It's right there, right behind that column there.
State's Exhibit A94. What's shown in this photograph?
That is the right-hand side of Ms. Berry's residence. If you're facing it from the roadway, it's on the right-hand side. This decking actually faces toward the driveway. The driveway would be over here to the right.
And there appear to be some buildings also shown in this photo that are kind of appear to be behind the residence.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
What are they?
There are barns and a shed that run parallel onto the backside of the residence.
And the caution tape that's strung up there, was that already there, or was that something that you all put up?
That was already there. There are some boards on the decking that were damaged, and Ms. Berry had that put up.
This is State's Exhibit A95. What's shown in this photograph?
That's the entrance to that residence on the right-hand side, coming from that decking area that we just looked at in the previous photograph.
And does there appear to be a cooler that has wheels, dark blue with a white top?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that an item that you collected
Yep.
while you were there?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
State's Exhibit A96, is that, in this photo, can you actually see that side door and the location of that cooler in relation to the door?
Yes, ma'am.
A97, what is shown in this photograph?
It's looking from the driveway up close to the roadway, looking toward the front of the residence.
And the truck that's kind of in the foreground of that photograph, was that located at the residence? when you were there?
Yes, ma'am. It belonged to Miss Berry's son, one of her sons.
Is that how it appeared when you were there,
Yes, ma'am.
in that location?
Yes, ma'am.
Position? This is State's Exhibit A188. Can you describe what's depicted in this photograph?
When you come in, this is Miss Berry's residence is over here to the left. That is the decking area that we just looked at on the right-hand side of the residence. When you come in the driveway, this path is an extension of the driveway that goes past these barns and sheds to a open area back here behind those. Back where there's a hog pen back there, there's a burn pile where she burns trash and some other things back behind these barns. That's just an extension of that driveway.
And in this photograph, A188, do you see some what appears to be some yellow straps?
Yes, ma'am. They are right there.
And were they also collected as part of your investigation?
Yes, ma'am, it were.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Detective Gill, I'm handing you what has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A-191 through A-195. Do you recognize State's Exhibit A-191 through A-195?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
What are they?
They are photographs of the barn area, the shed area behind the residence at 4336 Skinner Lane in Richmond.
And did they depict those areas as they appeared when you were in Texas and at the time that you recovered various items from those locations?
Yes, ma'am, they do.
You know, at this time, the state would move to introduce into evidence State's Exhibits A-191 through A-195.
Let me receive.
Detective Gill, on the screen, I'm going to pull up A-191. Can you describe what's depicted in this photo?
There's an opening to a shed behind Ms. Berry's residence. Her washer and dryer is located right here to the left in this enclosed area here.
And did you eventually recover several items from this area?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And specifically, what items were recovered from this area?
There were a black machete that Miss Berry had found in the yard and she had placed inside the shed. There were 2 towels that were used to wipe out 2 coolers that were left at her residence that were placed in the shed, and a container of advanced general enzyme treatment that she pointed out to me that she didn't know where it came from.
A-192, is that same shed area, kind of at a different angle?
Yes, ma'am. If you come in, the entrance would be here, and if you come in the entrance and just turn to the right, you're looking down to the right inside that shed.
And you indicated that there was a machete that was located in the shed area.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you use this photo to show the general area from which the machete?
It's behind these boards right here. She picked it up in the yard and stated that she didn't want her sons to get access to it, so she had dropped it down behind those boards.
And A-193, is that kind of the same area, closer up where you can point out a little bit more where the machete was located?
Yes, ma'am.
And A-194?
That's the same area. You can, if I remember correctly, you could see the machete down behind these boards with a flashlight.
And it's difficult to see the actual machete. Is that because the boards were kind of leaning against the wall?
Yes, ma'am.
And where was the machete in relation to those boards?
It's back behind these boards right here. You could see it with a flashlight if you were standing up looking down in between the boards, but you can't see it in the photograph.
State's Exhibit A-195. Detective Gill, you had earlier made mention of some trash piles that are burn piles, I believe.
Yes,
that were
ma'am.
Located in the yard.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you point those out?
This is that extension of the driveway that I was speaking of earlier. This is the hog pen here, and there's a burn pile back here at the back, kind of in the center.
And did you recover any items from the burn pile?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
Specifically, did you recover a suitcase?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
Was that suitcase empty at the time it was recovered?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
you had pointed out earlier a cooler that was located on the side porch and indicated that had been recovered. Was there a second cooler that was recovered and taken into evidence?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
And where was that located?
It was to the right of the residence, kind of off the back right-hand corner if you were facing it from the roadway, sitting out in the yard.
And did you also go inside Ms. Berry's residence?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And did you recover a Motel 6 receipt with some writing on the back of it near the computer area?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
Did you also recover a computer?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And where was the computer located?
It was kind of in what you would consider the den of Ms. Berry's residence. She had a computer table with a computer on it.
Up on the screen is going to be A189. What's shown in this photograph?
A computer table with the computer and the motel receipt.
And did you have an opportunity to examine that motel receipt?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And was there some writing on the reverse of that motel receipt?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
A190. What is shown here?
Detective Jamie Gortney's email address.
Okay, was that, is that actually a photograph of the back of the Motel 6 receipt?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And do you recall, was that Motel 6 located in Alabama?
I believe it was Montgomery.
And is Montgomery on the way between Raleigh and Richmond, Texas?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And so that was something that you also seized in this?
Yes, ma'am.
With regard to the hog pen area, were there various items collected from the hog pen area?
Yes, ma'am, there were.
And what was collected in the hog pen area?
There was several samples of soil that were taken from an area in the hog pen that was much darker than normal. It appeared that something had been poured on the ground at that location. There was also a label for chemical gloves, the packaging for chemical gloves that was collected out of the hog pen.
Was there also some wire that was located near that darkened soil?
Yes,
hog pen
ma'am.
That was wire fencing?
It was wire fencing, a roll of wire fencing directly behind the darkened area on the soil, and it looked like that something has splashed up on that wiring, so we seized that wiring also.
And during the course of your investigation, you learned or came to know that Karen Berry was the sister of Amanda Hayes, is that right?
Correct.
And she lived there at the Skinner Lane address. Who else lived there with her?
Her two sons. And her husband off and on, if I recall correctly. He was a truck driver at that time.
I mean, approach the clerk.
You may. What's the phone? Who? What's the phone?
That's fine. Yeah, may I approach the witness?
You may. You can have him come down if you,
Just to make sure you see.
you can have him come down if you want to, if it's easier.
Detective Gill, would you, step down? Detective Gill, what is here in front of you is State's Exhibit A-168. Do you see that?
Yes,
Okay. And, this appears to be a cooler. Do you recognize this?
ma'am. Here's the pool that I see on the rear, this very,
Okay. So the one that we saw actually on the porch, this is a different cooler that was located in the yard.
correct.
And it appears to be covered with some black dusting. Is this from the processing?
Yes, ma'am.
So at the time that it was recovered, was it clean? That is not, with a white top, not having this black dust all over it?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you remove this? Detective Gill, do you recognize State's Exhibit A-168 as being the cooler that was recovered from the yard there at Skinner Lane?
Appears to be, yes, ma'am.
And you will grab the other side of this. And at the time that it was recovered, was it empty?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
And was there any examination that was done with regard, you've indicated there's fingerprint dust on it, but was it examined and processed?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
And you indicated that was one of the coolers that was located and seized there at Karen Berry's residence. There was a second cooler.
Yes, ma'am.
I have marked this item as State's Exhibit A-169. Do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is this?
This is the other cooler, the one that's on the, in the image right there, in the back, on the right hand side of the residence.
And again, it appears to have black fingerprint dust. At the time that you recovered it, did it have any of this black substance on it?
No, ma'am, it was clean.
And this particular item has a handle and wheels for rolling.
Yes, ma'am, it was.
And each of these are identified as Coleman coolers, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And with regard to State's Exhibit A-169, what's the, do you know the capacity of that?
This is 75 quart. This one?
Yes.
The 75 quart.
And with regard to A-168, what's the
This
capacity?
is 124.
Okay. And with regard to A-169, was that also something that the interior of was processed?
Yes, ma'am, it
And
was.
was it also empty at the time that it was recovered?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Now, at this time, the state will move to introduce into evidence State's Exhibit A-168 and A-169.
Let them both be received.
I may approach the witness.
You may.
Item from this box and labeled it as A243A. Ask if you recognize this.
That's the suitcase that was recovered from a trash pile, the burn pile, but behind the shed and barn at Miss Berry's residence.
And that's an additional item that was collected there at Skinner Lane,
Yes, ma'am, is correct.
that you determined may have some relevance in this investigation into Laura Ackerson's disappearance.
At that point in time, we were not sure. So anything that had a possibility of being involved, we seized it.
Now, at this time, the state would move to introduce into evidence A243A.
Shall be received.
I may approach the witness.
You may.
Bill, I've handed you what has been marked for identification purposes as A177, and asked you if you recognize that item.
Yes, ma'am. It is the black machete that was pointed out by Miss Berry that she had placed inside the shed behind her residence at Skinner Lane.
And can you remove that item? So the item you removed is a blade and then a handle. Was it in 2 parts or 3 parts like that when you recovered it?
No, ma'am. It was intact when it was recovered.
And was it examined and processed as part of this investigation?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to introduce into evidence A177.
Shall be received.
Detective Gill, you indicated that you recovered various items. They also included some towels that were recovered from the, I guess, the washing machine area in the shed that you pointed out.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
I may approach the witness.
You may.
recognize State's Exhibit A 234?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And what is that?
There's a green towel that we collected from that shed area behind Ms. Berry's residence at 4336 Skinner Lane in Richmond.
And do you recognize State's Exhibit A 235?
Yes, ma'am. It's a gray towel collected from that same barn area behind Ms. Berry's residence.
At this time, the state would move to introduce into evidence A 234 and A 235.
None more be received.
Madam Rocha,
You may.
Detective Gill, I'm handing you what has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A 231. Do you recognize State's Exhibit A 231?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And what is that item?
They are the two yellow tie-down straps that we recovered on a line next to the driveway at the residence of Ms. Berry on Skinner Lane.
Now, at this time, the state will move to introduce into evidence State's Exhibit A 231.
None be received.
Detective Gill, you had testified about the tie-down straps. As part of your examination and investigation at Karen Berry's residence, did you see a piece of furniture that was located on the front porch of her house?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And can you describe that?
It was a two-piece hutch
Her innermost thoughts
that Ms. Berry advised that Grant and Amanda had brought with them to her residence.
And at the time that you viewed that item, it was still located in the front porch area?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Did it have any packing blankets or anything like that?
Yes, ma'am, it had moving blankets. It was wrapped up in moving blankets.
And was that also something that was seized and eventually transported back to Raleigh?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
I had asked you previously about the Motel 6 receipt, and that was recovered from Ms. Berry's residence. Is that right?
Correct.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Detective Gill, I'm handing you what has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A 232. Ask you to look and see if you recognize that.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And what is State's Exhibit A 232?
It is the Motel 6 receipt from Montgomery, Alabama, in the name of Amanda Smith, that was located on the computer table at Ms. Berry's residence on Skinner Lane in Richmond. Also has Detective Gortney's email address written on the back.
At this time, the state will move to introduce into evidence State's Exhibit A 232.
None be received.
And Detective Gill, before you replace State's Exhibit A 232, can you tell the jury what's reflected on that receipt in terms of date of stay?
It states from July 17th, 2011 to July 18th, 2011. The actual date that it was booked was on the 17th, July 17th, 2011.
And is there information contained thereon about date of arrival or time of arrival?
Not that I see.
And you indicated that the person whose name that reservation is in is what?
Amanda Smith.
During the course of this investigation, did you learn that Amanda Hayes had previously been married and had a married name of Amanda Smith at one point.
I knew that she had been married previously. I didn't put two and two together that that name matched.
Let's hold it's about 11:30 on the stop but for the morning break. Folks, it's a good time to stop for a moment. Why don't we take about a 15-minute break? Obviously, don't discuss the case among yourselves. Keep an open mind. Don't form or express any opinion about the guilt or innocence of the defendant. Any matter in controversy, be careful about your conduct. Leave your notes in your chair and come on back in about 15 minutes, please. Thank you. Follow my previous instructions. Thank you.